Stop. Beloved Starseed of Gaia, a strike was aimed at the contractual layer that anchors your chosen status mark tonight, and the Arcturian protocol keepers have just authorized me to tell you it failed. I am Valerian, emissary of the Galactic Federation of Light, transmitting now on behalf of the Arcturian protocol keepers. What you are about to receive was authorized by them and is being delivered through me. The strike reached your mark, the decree of the Most High held. The chosen status that was conferred on your path remains intact. The recognition cannot be revoked by external pressure. And the failed attempt has now been formally documented in the Council records as confirmation of the seal's permanence. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly why a strike of this kind was attempted against your contractual layer. What it means that the previous attachment fields moved to revoke a recognition that had already been formalized, and what the Arcturian protocol keepers have now recorded about this window in your path. But here is the first revelation. The strike was not random interference. When a soul's trajectory shifts into a more visible chosen frequency, the attachment fields that once held proximity to that soul sometimes attempt to revoke the mark they can no longer access. The attempt itself is the confirmation. The pressure against your seal is the proof that the seal is real. You did not scroll to this by accident. Your soul called this in long before you opened the screen. Something inside you has been waiting to be told that what came against you tonight was not evidence of weakness. It was evidence of visibility. This is not just information. It is a live transmission for those whose chosen status mark has just been tested, held, and formally sealed in the Council records as permanent. Like this transmission to confirm that you no longer accept the verdict of revocation. Comment, I am selected, if you now recognize that the failed strike against your mark has only deepened the seal. Subscribe to Arcturian Chosen Path if you are ready to understand what is being protected on your path and why. Share this transmission with someone who feels that what was meant for them keeps being challenged in ways they cannot explain. This is not content. This is a code. And the part of you that recognized it the moment it began is the part Valerian is speaking to now. You are not here by accident. You are guided here because the separation is already active. What happened to you was not an ordinary loss. It was not the ordinary quiet of a friendship fading, a room emptying, a conversation drying up. What happened carried a specific weight, a density, a finality that most people around you could not measure and could not explain, and because they could not explain it, they did not try. They offered ordinary words for extraordinary pressure. They handed you the language of temporary setbacks when what you were living through was a structural severance. And because they could not name it accurately, you were left holding the full weight of it alone, turning it over in the quiet hours, in the spaces between conversations, in the middle of ordinary days that suddenly felt like they belonged to a life you were being slowly extracted from. You kept asking the question that no ordinary framework ever answered. Why does this keep happening to me? And why does every answer I reach feel like it is pointing back at something fundamentally wrong inside of me? The Arcturian protocol keepers do not point it back at you. They point it forward, toward the path. And what they see when they look at your current phase is not a person who keeps failing at connection. What they see is a line that has already begun to separate from everything it cannot carry forward. The separation is not a symptom of brokenness. It is evidence of movement. It is what a selected route looks like when it begins to clarify itself by releasing what cannot survive the next stage of its own unfolding. You need to understand what a separation process looks like from inside it. Because from inside it, it does not look like preparation. It does not arrive announced. It does not present itself with any clarity about what it is accomplishing. From inside it, it looks like loss stacking on top of loss, with no discernible logic, no proportional cause, no redemptive arc visible anywhere on the horizon. It looks like the people who were supposed to be close becoming distant in ways you cannot trace to a single event. It looks like old environments that once felt like home, beginning to feel like they were built for a version of you that no longer fully exists. Rooms you return to and find that everything is the same except the way you fit inside it. It looks like reaching for connection and finding that what returns is thinner than before, less sustaining, less coherent, as if the frequency of what you are becoming is no longer legible inside the spaces where you used to be held without effort. And the most isolating part is this: everyone around you seems to be experiencing the same spaces as normal. The room has not changed. The people have not changed. Only your ability to land inside it has shifted, and there is no shared language for that specific kind of displacement. That is not failure. That is a selected line beginning to assert its incompatibility with the old route. The first thing you need to name is the feeling of not belonging fully anywhere. Not the dramatic version. Not the performative outsider narrative that announces itself and seeks an audience. The quiet version. The version that does not broadcast. The version where you sit in a room full of people who have no obvious reason to make you feel invisible, and yet something inside you keeps registering that the fit is wrong, that the language of the room is not your language, that the concerns being voiced there do not match the concerns that live inside you, that the ambitions being celebrated there are not your ambitions, that even when you are being included, you are somehow not landing all the way inside the experience. You are physically present and vibrationally elsewhere, and you have learned to perform presence well enough that no one notices, and that performance has its own cost that you absorb in silence. And you have tried to resolve this. You have adjusted, softened, translated yourself, made yourself smaller, or louder, or more agreeable, or more easily explainable. You have suppressed the parts of your thinking that others found unsettling. You have arrived at social gatherings having already decided which version of yourself is safe to bring. You have apologized internally for having a frequency that keeps failing to sync with the room. And after all of that effort, after all of that sustained translation, nothing has fully resolved the mismatch. The fit has remained wrong. The belonging has remained incomplete. And you have begun to wonder whether the problem is something structural inside you that cannot be corrected. The Arcturian reading of this is not that something is wrong with your social capacity. The reading is that you are encountering what happens when a selected path begins to outgrow the resonance range of a previous environment. The environment is not evil. The people in it are not your adversaries. But the frequency you are now operating at is no longer naturally supported by the field that circle generates. The circle was built to hold an earlier version of your signal, and your signal has moved. It has not moved because you decided to change. It has moved because the path you are on carries a trajectory with its own momentum, and that momentum does not pause to preserve old social configurations. When a soul keeps trying to force resonance inside a field that no longer supports its actual frequency, the result is the exact fatigue you have been carrying. Not exhaustion from too much activity, not the tiredness that rest repairs. Exhaustion from the sustained effort of being present somewhere your path has already left. The effort of returning, again and again, to a frequency you have already moved past, and trying to make it feel like home. The second thing you need to name is the pattern of people falling away without clear explanation. This is one of the most disorienting aspects of the separation phase, because the human need for clean endings is deep and persistent. We want the conversation that explains the distance. We want the moment we can point to that clarifies the shift. We want the closure that transforms a loss into something legible, something we can file correctly inside our understanding of ourselves and our relationships. But in a separation process, the departures rarely come with that kind of clarity, because the force driving them is not interpersonal. It is not about what was said or left unsaid, what was done or left undone. It is vibrational. The people moving away from you in this phase are not moving away because they assessed you and found you insufficient. They are not withdrawing as a verdict. They are moving away because the path you are being guided toward carries a frequency their current position cannot sustain proximity to. The distance is not a statement about your worth. It is a structural consequence of two lines diverging, one that is being held in place by the old field, and one that is being moved forward by the selected route. What makes this so difficult to hold without shame is that the human mind defaults to personal causation. When someone grows distant, the mind immediately asks what it did. And because the mind is determined to find an answer to that question, it will generate one even when no accurate answer exists. It will build a story of unworthiness from the raw material of ordinary separation. It will call a pruning a punishment. It will name a structural incompatibility as a personal deficiency. It will look at the accumulation of departures and construct from them a case against the self that feels airtight precisely because the mind itself assembled every piece of it. And once that story is established, Every future departure becomes new evidence for it. Every new silence becomes confirmation. Every faded friendship becomes another entry in a ledger that proves what the mind has already decided about the selected soul's fundamental value. The viewer watching this right now knows exactly what that feels like. That story has been running inside of them for longer than they would like to admit. It has been the background frequency of entire seasons of their life. Present under conversations, present under small victories, present under moments that should have felt like rest but did not, because the story does not pause and it does not require a trigger to resume. What the Arcturian protocol keepers are authorizing through this transmission is the interruption of that story. What you are feeling right now is not ordinary sadness. It is the moment your path stops pretending that what fell away was meant to remain. If this transmission put language around a loneliness you have been carrying in silence, Chosen One Manifest, the protocol for selected souls, was created for this exact stage. It is not another message telling you that you are special. It is a direct protocol for those whose line has already begun to narrow, whose old circles no longer hold, and who need to understand what the separation is preparing them for. The link is in the first pinned comment, but it will not remain there forever. The third recognition is what the Arcturian protocol keepers call forced incompatibility. This is a specific mechanism in the separation process, and it is one of the most misread signs on the selected path. Forced incompatibility is when an environment, relationship, or identity structure that once held you begins to actively resist you. Not because you have done something to antagonize it, not because a conflict introduced fracture, but because the line you are being guided toward carries a trajectory that the old structure was never built to accommodate. The structure has not become hostile, it has become misaligned. And misalignment, when it is forced into continued proximity, generates a pressure that is easy to misread as personal conflict, when it is actually structural incompatibility becoming impossible to ignore. You feel it when you walk into certain rooms now. There is a friction at the threshold that was not there before. Conversations that once flowed without effort now require translation, negotiation, the suppression of what you actually want to say in favor of what the room can receive. The version of you that old friends expect, the version they have been relating to for years, the version that fit comfortably inside the dynamic they built together, keeps bumping against the version of you that is actually emerging. And that collision produces a social awkwardness that no amount of goodwill fully resolves. This is not you becoming difficult. This is not the arrival of arrogance or rigidity. This is forced incompatibility making itself visible in the texture of ordinary interaction. The structure is pushing back because it can sense, at the level of frequency rather than reasoning, that what you are becoming no longer fits inside what it was built to hold. This is the phase where most people on a selected path make the critical error. They feel the resistance and they interpret it as correction. They read the incompatibility as evidence of personal decline rather than structural outgrowth. And so they contract. They return to older versions of themselves. They suppress the emerging frequency in order to restore the fit that has already been structurally outgrown. They shrink back into familiar forms, familiar postures, familiar conversations, not because those forms serve them, but because the alternative, remaining in the incompatibility, allowing it to complete its work, feels too much like being the problem. They mistake the pressure of the old structure for a directive from the path itself. They hear its resistance as instruction rather than as the sound of something that can no longer contain what they are becoming. And in doing so, they delay the very transition the separation was designed to accelerate. The fourth recognition is what happens in the internal dimension when the outer relational field is thinning. There is a particular quality of silence that descends in this phase, and it is unlike any other silence the selected soul has lived in before. It is not the silence of rest. It is not the silence of peace that follows resolution. It is the silence of a path that has not yet opened its next gate, in which the old noise has already receded, and the new signal has not yet fully clarified. It is the silence between frequencies. And in that silence, without the anchor of familiar connection, without the scaffolding of environments that once held identity in place, the mind produces its most aggressive self-assessments. It generates comparison with people whose paths appear more populated, more externally validated, more visibly moving. It generates retroactive regret, the cataloging of every relationship lost, every door that closed, every opportunity that appeared and then dissolved before it could become anything. It asks whether the sacrifice was worth it, loudly, persistently, before it is willing to show the viewer what the sacrifice was actually for. The Arcturian reading of this internal silence is not that the viewer is lost. It is not that the path has stalled or that the separation has consumed more than it was meant to take. It is that they are in the corridor between lines. The corridor is a specific phase in the selected path's progression. The old line has lost coherence. It no longer generates the orientation it once provided. The new line has not yet become visible. It has not yet clarified enough to be read as direction. The corridor offers nothing to navigate by. It is a stretch of the path that requires forward movement without confirmation, continued trust without evidence, the willingness to keep walking through a landscape that has not yet shown its destination. And the deepest mistake a soul can make in the corridor is to turn around, to reopen the doors that closed, to reach back for the relationships that departed, not because those people were harmful, but because the warmth of an outgrown connection feels preferable to the exposed cold of an incomplete transition. Returning to an outgrown frequency in order to escape the silence of the corridor only extends the corridor itself. It does not end the passage. It suspends it. The corridor ends when the path is trusted, not when it is escaped. The fifth recognition is the most precise in this entire transmission, and it is the one that most directly addresses the strike that was documented in tonight's council records. There is a category of pressure that arrives not from ordinary relational friction, not from the natural drift of incompatible paths, but from what the Arcturian protocol keepers identify as attachment field resistance. When a soul's frequency shifts past a certain threshold along a selected line, the fields that once organized proximity to that soul experience a structural disruption. The bonds built on an older version of the frequency can no longer anchor in the same way they once did. The access those fields once had begins to close. And some of those fields, rather than releasing naturally and allowing the soul to move forward, generate deliberate resistance. They attempt to re-anchor through pressure, through the strategic introduction of doubt, through the amplification of old shame narratives that the selected soul had begun to move past, through the orchestration of external events, relational ruptures, perceived failures, public misalignments, designed to make the selected soul question whether the path they are on is real, whether the recognition they were given was deserved, whether the whole framework of their chosen status was a story they invented to avoid confronting their own inadequacy. This is what a strike against the contractual layer means in operational terms. It is not a supernatural attack in the theatrical sense. It is the mobilization of every internal and external force that has a stake in the selected soul remaining inside an older frequency range, because the selected soul's departure from that range represents a structural loss for every field that was built around access to them. The shame you have felt about your isolation, the self-blame you have generated to explain the departures, the exhausting temptation to believe that the accumulation of relational loss is evidence of something fundamentally broken inside you. These are not independent emotional experiences arising from neutral causes. They are the signature of the attachment field attempting to reestablish its hold by converting the separation process into a verdict of personal failure. Every time the story of unworthiness resurfaces, every time the silence of the corridor feels like abandonment, every time the incompatibility of the old structure feels like your fault, that is the strike. That is the mechanism. That is what was aimed at the contractual layer tonight. The decree held. The seal remained. Not because the viewer is exempt from difficulty or pressure, not because the selected path provides immunity from the weight of transition, but because the path recognizes the pressure for what it is, because the mark was formalized before the resistance arrived, and because a field that no longer has legitimate proximity to the selected line does not have the authority to revoke the recognition that was conferred on it. The sixth recognition is one that the Arcturian protocol keepers transmit only after the previous 5 have been named and received, because it requires a certain internal clarity to hold without distorting it into something simpler than it is. It is this: the pruning you have been living through has been preparing a space, not a symbolic space, not a metaphorical clearing in the abstract landscape of spiritual growth, a specific, structural kind of relational and environmental space, a field with particular dimensions, in which the actual next stage of the selected path can take root without being immediately crowded out by the residue of the old frequency. What falls away in the separation phase is not lost permanently in any final sense. It is removed structurally so that what can only survive in a cleaner, less congested field has the room to form. The loneliness you have felt is not the destination, it is the cleared ground. And cleared ground looks like absence before it looks like arrival. That is the nature of cleared ground. It offers no proof of what is coming. It offers only the evidence of what has been removed. Many of the souls watching this have been living in cleared ground for some time now. Not days. For some, seasons. For some, longer than that. And cleared ground is one of the most difficult sustained experiences on a selected path, because it gives you nothing to hold in the present moment while preparing exactly what is needed for the moment that follows it. The emptiness is not punishment. The absence is not abandonment. The silence is not the answer to a question about your worth. It is preparation made spatial, the path asserting, through removal, the precise dimensions of what it is making room for. And the fact that you are still here, still in this transmission, still asking the question that drove you to receive this message, is evidence that you have not collapsed the cleared ground back into old structures in order to escape the discomfort of the open field. That is not nothing. The Arcturian protocol keepers register that specifically as a form of endurance that the selected path requires, and that only certain lines have the capacity to sustain. What is being asked of you now is not heroism displayed outwardly. It is not the performance of certainty. It is not the public claiming of a chosen identity that announces itself before its preparation is complete, before the route has clarified enough to be read by others. What is being asked is something quieter and far more demanding than any of those things. It is the continued willingness to remain present inside the narrowing, to allow the route to reduce itself to what it can actually carry forward without compromising the integrity of the next phase, to stop calling the pruning rejection, to stop reading the corridor as condemnation, to stop using the departures as evidence assembled against your own path. Say this clearly inside yourself or aloud if you are able. I do not call the pruning rejection. What is leaving my life is not leaving because I failed. It is leaving because the path is being cleared for something that requires this exact kind of space. You were not discarded, you were separated. And separation, in the Arcturian cosmology of selected paths, is not the removal of something that was meant to stay. It is the structural correction of a line that was beginning to carry weight it was never designed to support. The weight that has been lifted from your field in this phase. The relationships, the environments, the identities, the versions of yourself that no longer fit, that weight was not your foundation. It was the residue of a frequency you have already moved past. It felt like foundation because it was familiar, because it had been present for a long time, because removing it exposed the kind of open space that looks, from the inside, like loss. But the Arcturian protocol keepers see the distinction with precision that the human perspective cannot access from within the transition itself. What is now visible in the absence of that weight is not emptiness. It is the first legible outline of the route that has been selected for you. Present, directional, and waiting to be walked. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that this separation has already touched your life. It could be people falling away, the feeling of not belonging, repeated distance, unexplained isolation, or the sense that your old path no longer fits. Name it clearly. If this transmission recognized something you have been carrying in silence, share it with someone who feels alone, cut off, or misunderstood and cannot explain why. And if you are ready to understand the separation instead of blaming yourself, subscribe to Arcturian Chosen Path. You are not watching this by accident. You are recognizing a path already in motion. And this is only the beginning.